Once upon a time, in a kingdom where everyone seemed to have a flair for dramatic decisions, there lived a fairy named Maleficent. Now, you've probably heard her described as the evil fairy who cursed a princess for no good reason. But, as with most fairy tales, the story you know is only half the truth. Let's set the stage. The kingdom was celebrating the birth of Princess Aurora, a radiant baby destined for a life of grace and beauty, or so everyone hoped. A grand christening was planned, complete with royal fanfare and 3 colorful fairies who brought gifts like kindness, song, and glittery nonsense. Yet somehow, amidst all this meticulous planning, one name was noticeably absent from the guest list: Maleficent. Now, Maleficent wasn't just any fairy. She was the kind of figure you'd notice from a mile away, draped in black, with horns that screamed authority and a glare sharp enough to shatter a mirror. She wasn't the type you'd forget to invite unless you wanted trouble, and trouble is exactly what the kingdom got. When Maleficent learned of the snub, she didn't sulk in her enchanted lair like some second-rate sorceress. No, she showed up uninvited, turning heads and probably stealing the show. What followed was one of the most infamous moments in fairy tale history: the spindle curse. Yes, Maleficent declared that Aurora would prick her finger on a spinning wheel and fall into an eternal sleep, a curse that sent the entire kingdom into a panic. But was Maleficent truly evil, or just a misunderstood fairy with a flair for the dramatic? That depends on who you ask. What's clear is that her curse wasn't just an act of vengeance. It was a response to years of being dismissed, underestimated, and excluded. Long before she became the Queen of Curses, Maleficent was just your average fairy. If your average fairy had towering horns, a penchant for dramatic entrances, and a wardrobe that screamed, "I'm not like the other fairies," she lived in the Enchanted Moors, a mystical wonderland filled with sparkling streams, magical creatures, and what she thought was a peaceful community. And honestly, life was pretty great, except for one tiny glaring issue: the humans. Oh, the humans, always chopping down trees, building their castles, and acting like the moors were just an extension of their backyard. Maleficent, however, wasn't the kind to sit back and let her home turn into a medieval parking lot. From a young age, she took it upon herself to be the unofficial protector of the moors. Armed with her sharp wit and even sharper magic, she became a fierce defender of her land, often scaring off intruders with a well-timed thunderstorm or an overly enthusiastic flock of crows. Unfortunately, the humans didn't quite see things her way. To them, Maleficent was more of a nuisance than a hero. Kings and queens whispered about her in hushed tones, warning their subjects to avoid the wicked fairy. Wicked? Really? Just because she stopped them from deforesting the moors didn't make her wicked. It made her eco-conscious. Then came that day, the day that changed everything. Maleficent, ever the optimist, had convinced herself that the humans might actually come around. Maybe they'd finally appreciate her strength and beauty. But instead of recognition, she got betrayal. A human she had trusted, let's call him that guy, decided to climb the social ladder by betraying her. In a cruel twist, he stole something precious from her, something that left her more powerful but also more guarded. From that moment on, Maleficent vowed never to trust humans again. She leaned into her reputation as a fearsome fairy, embracing the role of the misunderstood outsider. If the world wanted to see her as a villain, fine, she'd give them a villain, but not just any villain, a spectacular one. All right, Maleficent, living her best life in the moors, minding her own business, occasionally zapping intruders into oblivion. A fairy's gotta do what a fairy's gotta do, right? Life was cruising along perfectly fine. She had her domain, she had her reputation, and let's not forget the signature horns, because if you've got them, flaunt them. But then, out of nowhere, something completely ridiculous happened that set the whole kingdom into motion: the christening of Princess Aurora. And guess what? Maleficent wasn't invited. Oh yes, that's right, not even a single invitation. And trust us, it wasn't some innocent oversight. No, it was a calculated snub. How dare they? This wasn't just any fairy being left off the guest list. This was Maleficent, the most fabulous, the most powerful fairy in the land. How could they forget about her? It was like they decided, you know what? We've got a party, we've got gifts, but let's leave the fairy with the horns at home, because she's obviously too busy being awesome. Maleficent didn't just sit back and accept this disrespect, though. Oh no, she wasn't the type to sit in a corner like some wallflower. No, when she was snubbed, she made sure everyone knew it. So, what did she do? She showed up, uninvited, and made the biggest statement ever. Imagine it, the entire kingdom gathering to celebrate, thinking they were having this lovely little event, and then bam! Maleficent swoops in like an unannounced pop star crashing a concert. It was the kind of entrance that would make heads turn and jaws drop. The drama, the flair, the magnitude. Nobody would ever forget this moment. What followed was definitely not subtle. Maleficent, with all the confidence in the world, dropped that iconic curse on the princess, ensuring that Aurora would prick her finger on a spinning wheel and fall into an eternal sleep. Was it over the top? Absolutely. Did it make the event memorable? Oh, you bet. You know what the real problem was? It wasn't that Maleficent cursed the princess. Oh no. The real issue was that she had been treated like an afterthought, like she was somehow unimportant in the grand scheme of things. How could anyone expect Maleficent to just roll with it? Was she supposed to accept being completely overlooked with grace? Well, that's not exactly her style. Maleficent wasn't about to just sit there, twiddling her thumbs and saying, "Oh, no big deal. I'm totally fine with being excluded." So, she did what anyone would do when they've been completely and utterly disrespected. She made the ultimate statement. Did she curse the princess into an eternal sleep? Well, yeah, maybe a little bit, but hey, it wasn't like anyone else had the guts to do something as dramatic as that. And here's the kicker. After everything, Maleficent gets blamed for being the villain. Seriously, all she did was deliver a dose of reality, reminding the kingdom that magic and consequences aren't all sunshine and rainbows. And what did she get in return? A reputation as the evil fairy. Classic. So, after that epic entrance, you'd think Maleficent would have just sat back and let everyone stew in the chaos she'd created, right? But no, the universe, or maybe just the stubborn heroes in this whole mess, had a few more surprises for her. And honestly, the way things unfolded, pure comedy gold. Let's start with the first major obstacle, those three bumbling fairies. Oh, you know the ones. Flora, Fauna, and Merryweather. These so-called good fairies were supposed to be the heroes of the story, but in reality, they were like that one friend who tries to bake cookies but ends up creating a charcoal briquette instead. Every time they opened their mouths, it was like, "Are you seriously trying to stop me?" They decide that instead of letting Aurora live her life in peace after Maleficent's little gift, they'd go hide her away in a cottage in the woods. I mean, seriously, what's their grand plan here? Let's take a newborn baby, lock her away with no one to help raise her properly, and hope everything works out. Who does that? It's like sending your kid to the wilderness to find themselves, except with zero chance of survival. At this point, Maleficent is just shaking her head from the sidelines, wondering how in the world this was supposed to be a good idea. And of course, there's that whole, "Oh, let's keep her hidden from Maleficent" thing, as if hiding Aurora in the middle of a forest would somehow make her invisible to a fairy who literally controls the entire moors. You can't just put a baby in a cabin and expect Maleficent not to find it. That's like thinking you can hide a giant, flaming dumpster fire in the middle of Times Square and not have it catch anyone's attention. Come on, people, get it together. Then comes the whole charm situation, which just takes the absurdity to new heights. The entire kingdom, at least the ones who weren't hiding in the woods like frightened mice, are sitting there, all smug and thinking, "Oh, we'll just find a way to break the curse. We'll do it with true love's kiss." Because sure, why not? Who doesn't believe in the magical, life-altering power of a teenage kiss from some prince? Now, let's talk about this prince, shall we? Prince Philip. Ah yes, the hero. The knight in shining armor sent to rescue the princess. Now this guy sounded cool in theory, right? But then you see him in action, and it's like watching a 16-year-old try to fight a dragon with a stick. He has literally zero idea of what he's doing until, well, he doesn't. But he gets lucky. Maleficent's dragon is like a ferocious creature with a bad attitude, and Prince Charming over here decides he's going to waltz in and save the day. This is the kind of stuff that makes you question your life choices. When he actually does show up, after literally the worst attempt at a rescue mission ever, it's like someone handed him a sword and told him to just believe. If it were that easy, we'd all be superheroes. Honestly, watching him stumble through that scene was like watching a toddler attempt a game of dodgeball. You want to believe he's the hero, but you're sitting there thinking, there's no way this is going to end well. Spoiler, it doesn't. And here's where the plot really starts to get ridiculous. Why is it that Prince Philip only becomes capable of fighting Maleficent after she literally transforms into a fire-breathing dragon? Where was this bravery earlier? Why didn't he just throw down with her before? I mean, look, it's Maleficent, the the villain, and she's been giving him so many opportunities to be a hero. But he doesn't step up until she turns into a giant dragon, breathing fire and fury like it's the final boss fight of some RPG. Does that seem a bit too convenient to anyone else? It's almost as if the writers needed to have a climactic battle, but they forgot to actually build to it. Cue the plot hole. And let's talk about this dragon fight for a second. Maleficent transforms into a literal dragon, and it's not just any dragon, this thing is straight up unstoppable. It's like watching Godzilla's cousin get loose in a medieval fantasy world. But here's the thing, we all know how these fairy tales go. The heroes win, the villains lose, and the kingdom gets its happily ever after, without ever considering the sheer absurdity of the journey. So, maybe it's time to rethink our own happy endings, huh? Go ahead, join the conversation. Maleficent may have lost, but this villain's definitely here to stay. See you next time, where hopefully we can finally give the bad guys their due.